Centuries ago, the great Persian poet Sa'di wrote, "Human beings are members of one another, created from the same essence." Many of us as immigrants have at times felt that our voices were not being heard by this liberal government as they should be. But fortunately, there are still people who listen, who stand beside communities, and who raise their voices alongside others during difficult times. استیون کران یکی از افرادی بودند که در تظاهرات اخیر همیشه شرکت داشتند. He stood up beside our people and as a lawyer stood for us. Stephen Curran is an example of people who can listen, and he showed the respect, solidarity, and humanity. He proved that these words have meaning and exist. There are still people who stand up for others bravely, respectfully, understand the other cultures. Tonight, with hope for a brighter future for Iran, Canada, and all people around the world, it is my great honor to invite Mr. Stephen Curran to join us. لطفاً تشویق کنید. دست بزنید.
درود بر دوستانه. I look out at this crowd. This event really came together just in the past week, last notice. But I look out at this crowd and I'm in awe. And I'm humbled by the turnout. I look across the crowd, I see a lot of new faces and people that I recognize from our last campaign in 2024 and 2025. Welcome to all of you. I also want to welcome all of the volunteers and the staff members of my campaign that are here, all the folks that braved the bridges to come from the other side, and the traffic that we have here on the North Shore. Thank you very, very much for taking the time. I also want to point out that my wife and my family, my kids, are in the front row here. And I point that out because family is very important to me. And I know that when I run as a candidate in an election, this time a by-election, that it's not just my commitment, it's the commitment of the entire family. And so I'm honored by their presence, I'm honored by their support, and I thank you very much for being here. So in a minute, I'm going to have an opportunity to introduce a very good friend of mine. He's my boss, my leader. Actually, it's not my wife. But she qualifies, she checks all those boxes as well too. But before I do that, I also wanted to take the opportunity to relay just a very short couple of stories about my time as a candidate here in North Vancouver, Capilano, both in 2025 during the election and then now in this by-election that we're entering into. And why the story is important is because I think it's a nice way of relaying your stories to Pierre and to be able to bring that back to Ottawa. Two things really stand out during my time campaigning for Member of Parliament, the last election. I had conversations with some of you out in the crowd and some of you that are not here that were hushed conversations in coffee shops. People that were worried about who would hear those conversations, who would see them talking to somebody vying for federal office. They were worried not just about their own safety and security here in our community, but also for that of their family back in Iran. And that really touched me because I saw the fear that they live in my country, in Canada. And I cannot understand how that is left to be maintained. But the other story is a more positive one. Just in February 14th, my wife and I attended the demonstrations at David Lamb Park. You remember this is before the war had actually begun. And it was really a gathering of the community to talk about the horrors that were being visited upon your family, your friends, and your neighbors back in Iran. The shocking thing with all of the death, the tens of thousands of innocent civilians that were being killed by their own government, the shocking thing was that our own media was silent. I could not believe that the details of what was going on in Iran was so hard to find out. I had to go in person. I went to David Lamb Park, and I saw hundreds of thousands of you and your neighbors, my friends and my neighbors. And I came away, and I was talking with my wife about this, we came away awed by just how positive, how empathetic that crowd was, and how hopeful. So this is the message that I deliver to you, Pierre, is that this community, and I'm sure that you know this because you've been a leader on these issues for many, many years, but this community lives between fear and hope. Fear is very real, and it's very justified. But the hope is also very real. And I'm buoyed by that hope, and I want to take that message of hope with me to Ottawa as your messenger. In this by-election, we will have the eyes of the entire country on what happens here in North Vancouver, Capilano. The messages that we bring to this by-election are going to be the messages that we bring to all Canadians. I guarantee that. I'm serious about bringing a strong message for this community, and I want your help to have these conversations that don't end tonight. They continue for the next several months until we go to our election and we bring change to this community. Now I have to go to the brief formal remarks that I have. And I actually, before I introduce Pierre, I also want to point out that MP Sukhman Gill is here joining us today. Sukhman has been a very consistent ally for the Persian community during his time in Ottawa, and will continue to be so, and will be at my side, knocking on the doors here in North Vancouver, Capilano, in this by-election. But Pierre almost needs no introduction because, especially with respect to this community, he has been at the forefront of arguing for instance, putting the IRGC on a terrorist watch list in Canada. Back in 2018, that was the policy of our party. It is now law in Canada, but it took 6 years for it to happen. Pierre is a wonderful leader of our official opposition and a leader of our party who actually believes in the foundational values that you do: family, freedom, and independence. And so with that, I would like to invite Pierre Poilievre to the microphone to give us an exposition on what's important to him and how he sees this community going forward. Pierre?
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to Sukhman Gill. Listen, it is an honor to be here with our wonderful Persian community here in the most beautiful part of the country. Isn't it magnificent to live in beautiful British Columbia? I grew up as a kid in Alberta, and Albertans are the species that invades your province every summer to go to your lakes and your ocean front, and every winter to go skiing. But the moral of the story for me was when I would arrive here as an Albertan, my parents would say, this is a place, this country of ours, where you can achieve anything, where people come from all over the world, and they build lives through hard work, through following the law, through accepting a common set of values, and basically anyone from anywhere can achieve anything. And as a result, my ancestors came from Ireland, yours from Iran, but all for the same reason: to build a life, to be Canadians and Canadians first, to leave behind the dangers and disputes on the other side of the oceans, and to live in peace and tranquility with people of all different backgrounds. And that really was the Canadian promise. But that promise, after 11 years of this Liberal government, is broken. First of all, let's start off with just the cost of things. People can't afford to live anymore. Young people can't buy homes. We've got people lined up at food banks in record numbers. We've got interest rates rising on mortgages, with people worried they might lose their homes. A whole generation of youth believe they'll never be able to start families and give their parents grandchildren. And then there's crime and chaos, drugs and disorder increasingly on our streets. And that is why Stephen Curran stepped up in the last election to fight for this community, and to fight for affordability, safety, and to fight for the country that he grew up in, that allowed him to become such an incredibly successful corporate lawyer, helping to develop businesses all around the world. And the reason that he came back here, despite the fact that he could have made far more money had he stayed in Manhattan on Wall Street. But he decided he was going to run again in this by-election because he believed the Liberals were taking this community for granted. In particular, this Persian community. And he told me when we spoke that he wanted to fight for this community, fight for your safety, for your values, to fight for human rights. and to make this once again a country where you feel at home and feel safe. And frankly, this is an opportunity for the Persian community to send a message. You know, the Liberals refused for about 6 years to ban the IRGC. They allowed them to legally operate, coordinate, recruit, raise funds on Canadian streets for 6 years after the IRGC murdered 85 Canadians by firing a missile at PS Flight 752. Can you imagine any other country in the world where a foreign regime fires a missile and kills 85 of our citizens, and the group that did it can legally operate in that country for 6 years? You know what finally made them change their mind? You know what it was? A by-election. There was a by-election in St. Paul in Toronto, and Justin Trudeau was very afraid of losing, and in that community there was a very large Jewish community that wanted to ban the IRGC, and there was Persians there as well. So in order to try and hold on to this Liberal stronghold, they finally backed down to our conservative demand to ban the IRGC. What's the moral of the story? The by-elections don't choose governments, but they do send a message. I mean, after this by-election is over, the Liberals will still be in government. But boy, oh boy, could the Persian community ever send a message to this Liberal government that enough is enough, that we will no longer tolerate having IRGC and Iranian regime thugs walking around on our streets threatening our people. That is the message we need to send. They have not got the message. Let's just recount how bad it's gotten here in Canada. I'm going to go through a chronology here. In January 2024, 2 Canadians were indicted in the U.S. for their role in an alleged murder for hire plot on behalf of Iranian intelligence, according to a CSIS report. In 2024, again, agents of Iran attempted to assassinate former Justice Minister Erwin Koppel. The National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliament's 2024 report identified Iran as the primary perpetrators of repression against ethno-cultural communities in Canada. A 2025 CSIS report identified the Islamic Republic of Iran as a main perpetrator of foreign interference and espionage against Canada. According to CSIS, Canadians, quote, Canadians are targeted for opportunistic credential harvesting, phishing attacks, and exploitation. Iran uses malicious cyber activity to repress and manipulate Canada-based dissidents. According to CSIS, as late as 2023, Iran-aligned cyber actors such as the IRGC-linked Cyber Avengers have been targeting Western critical infrastructure, including healthcare and public health. Can you imagine if they attack the IT systems and the other technology that is used to carry out life-saving surgeries in our hospitals? The Hope Commission said that Iran is, quote, a considerable transnational threat because it is likely monitoring, influencing, collecting information on, harassing, and intimidating the Iranian diaspora community to prevent criticism of Iran. How is it the government is writing these reports about what is happening in our borders, but they're not doing anything to stop it? In 2023, Global News reported there are 700 IRGC top-level agents in Canada. And you know how many the government has managed to deport so far? One. The other 699 are walking freely in our streets, including in this city. More recently, the government issued a permit for a top high-ranking IRGC official to attend the FIFA delegation. They said, whoops, it was all a mistake. We didn't mean to do it. How many other mistakes have they made to let these people into our country? In September of 2025, the Immigration and Refugee Board declined to approve the deportation of Afshin Purnun, a former Director General of Iran's Road Ministry, who has allegedly been tasked with inviting members of the IRGC to attend political events here in Canada. As of February 5th, only one of the 28 officials, these are the 28 that the that the CBSA, our border officers, have identified 28 individuals who are linked to the Iranian regime in Canada and should be deported. And out of those 28, only one has actually been tracked down and removed. And because we do not have in-person interviews for refugee claimants. In Canada, we accept 80% of claimants, the highest acceptance rate of refugee claimants anywhere in the world, way higher than many European countries, because they actually do vetting. They don't just say, oh, you claim that you're a refugee, welcome to Canada. They actually bring them in for questioning to make sure, in fact, the person is not part of the regime that's doing the repression. And so that's why conservatives are fighting for concrete solutions to get these terrorists out of our country. We want to urgently enforce deportation orders for Iranian regime officials and block Iranian regime members involved in terrorism and crime from getting into Canada. Disrupt efforts in Canada to launder money that finance the regime's activities. Coordinate sanctions against the regime in Iran to ensure compliance, and it should be the official policy of the Canadian government that we want to see regime change in Iran. We do not want to see this regime go on. Mr. Carney has flipped and flopped. Nobody can figure out where he stands. The day the war began, he said he was for it. Then a day later, he said it's an illegal attack against the terrorist regime there. He refused to celebrate the killing of the Ayatollah. I mean, the Ayatollah is not a legitimate religious leader. He was the head of a terrorist theocracy. And nobody should be crying any tears or for him or for any other senior member of the Iranian regime. We should support all efforts in order to see that regime toppled. And we should be working with the diaspora community to determine how Canada can push for the recognition of a different government in Iran that truly represents the Persian people. We need to identify gaps in our national security legislation, which may expose, that we might ensure that we can stop the exploitation of those gaps by Iranian regime officials. We must complete, not only just set up a foreign agent registry, but bring in much bigger fines for those who were actually failed to put their name on the register. Right now, the fines are so small, there's very little risk for foreign agents to just ignore their legal obligations to identify themselves. And we want that to change with very serious multi-million-dollar fines and serious jail time for a foreign agent that refuses to register. We need to stop approving refugee claims without an in-person interview. Stand up against the tyrannical regime in Tehran and ensure justice for the Canadian citizens and permanent residents that were murdered with the downing of PS 752, including seizing all assets of the Iranian regime in Canada and giving those assets to the families of the victims. Conservatives will expel all of these agents and support political movements for the Iranian people, like those in the Women Life Freedom Movement. We need to take serious action, and all of you have an important role to play by having a strong voice for freedom-loving Persian people, standing for Canadian values on the floor of the House of Commons in the form of this articulate, intelligent, principled family man that we have in Stephen Curran. So let's get him elected. Let's send a message to Ottawa. Let's fight for Canadian values, for the values of the Persian people, and let's keep the fight alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pierre. I wanted to point out too that this is actually the very first event that we're doing for this by-election campaign. When Pierre and I were talking a couple weeks ago about what to do in Vancouver, North Vancouver, who to see, I said, I've got some folks that might want to meet you. I think that this is a message that we're going to send tonight to the leaders here in Ottawa. We're going to send the message to the rest of Canada come by-election night. So thank you very much. We're going to stick around here to do a handshake line. If you want to take a picture with Pierre, we're going to form a line along the side of the wall here. There's no rush at all because we're going to be here as long as it takes to meet with everybody that wants to meet with Pierre. And we'll have a chance to have a quick chat as well too. There's also food at the back, so please help yourself to refreshment. Please do, because my wife worked very hard to organize that. Thank you very much, everyone.